Podcast Answer Man, episode number 173.
Entertaining, educational, and encouraging content that makes a difference.
This is GSPN.TV.
Join the community.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Podcast Answer Man. My name is Cliff Ravenscraft, and this week, the episode is coming to you in the podcast feed a little bit later than what you're used to, but I have a reason for that, which I'm going to explain to you in just a few moments. And of course, I do have an exciting show for you today, as I am prepared now, at this very moment, to re-record my thoughts for you. Every now and then, my friends, I'll record an episode of a podcast that I'm just not happy with. Okay, and oftentimes these shows are recorded live, and there were several of you. I'd say there's somewhere between 20 to 40 people that were online who captured the original recording of Podcast Answer Man episode number 173 online. And you guys were so kind, so generous, and at the end of it, you were saying, hey, it wasn't that bad. In fact, it was I found it the beginning very informative, and I, and somebody said, well, you can't hit it out of the park every time, otherwise there's no room for improvement. And the more I thought of it, it's like, man, I just was so out of it. Folks, I just returned from a massive trip, out-of-town trip to Boston. I went there for the Catholic New Media Celebration. I was invited to be a guest speaker for SQPN, the StarQuest Production Network. They are an online new media network of podcasts founded and started off with a show that Father Roderick did years ago called The Catholic Insider. And then he basically had this vision for something bigger, and what it has become is absolutely amazing. You guys should at least just go over to sqpn.com and check out some of the podcasts over there, especially if you are of the Catholic faith. I think it would be especially interesting to you, or those of you who are interested in the Catholic faith, even learning more about the individuals who live their faith out in a very real and authentic way. They have some great content over there. Anyway, I was invited to come and speak with Father Roderick, who happens to be a close, very personal friend of mine, and it was the opportunity for he and I to actually see one another face-to-face for the very first time. We had known each other for 5 years, had been doing a podcast together for almost a year now, and on a weekly basis. And it's just been amazing, the friendship and the relationship that we've built with one another. And then to go to Boston and finally meet him face to face was totally an honor. And we had the most amazing time. And in fact, if you want to hear me kind of relive that entire weekend, I encourage you to head over to pursuingabalancedlife.com and listen to episodes number 475 through 478. That is in those. It's a 4-part series titled My Catholic Weekend. So My Catholic Weekend parts 1 through 4 is episode 475 through 478 of pursuingabalancedlife.com. Now, why is it called My Catholic Weekend? Well, it's because myself, I'm not Catholic. I'm a Protestant Christian guy. Coming from a little bit of mostly from a Baptist, Nazarene, and somewhat non-denominational evangelical background kind of guy, and with a little mixture of some experience in the charismatic church, the Assembly of God, and Pentecostal church, and so many other weird things that make up who I am today as far as my faith and everything. But I was somebody who also went to Catholic school as a kid, and if you want to hear the whole story and how it was for me as a non-Catholic to be, I think, probably the only non-Catholic person in a conference of nearly 200 people and actually getting up and speaking in front of them, that if you want to hear what that might have been like for me, again, there's a 4-part episode over there. Go check it out. Anyway, I share all that to say this. Today's episode, if anybody ever doubted me when I said Leo Laporte's out of his mind, when he says podcasting is dead, if anybody ever doubted me, this episode, I hope, will be a reinforcement for you. Not that I think that I need to convince anybody that podcasting isn't dead, but when Leo Laporte will say something like that, it's just absolutely ludicrous and ridiculous. And I really believe that from where I sit, and folks, I sit from a very unique perspective. Okay, I sit from a very unique perspective where I actually deal in podcasting and new media full time as my career, and the number of people that I see adopting podcasting into their branding, into their marketing efforts, into their building communities around their organizations. The Catholic Church this weekend proved to me that even though SQPN, the StarQuest Production Network, this Catholic podcasting network, even though it's been around, since it's got its foundations built back in 2005, it's only just now starting to hit this critical mass. And I mean, you've got a lot of talented people. I mean, extremely talented people behind this StarQuest Production Network. These are people who are devoting a great deal of their time and energy and attention to moving their message forward into the world through podcasting. And even now, after 5 years, I would say it's just now starting to get this critical mass. And I saw some light bulbs go off in the minds of certain people who are in the Catholic Church that might be able to propel them to not just the next level, but actually to just shoot them up a couple levels, to kick it up several notches. And sorry about that. I actually have my iPhone hooked up and ready to go for an audio clip here, and that's why you have been piped into my Twitter notifications, but I'm just going to leave that in there. Anyway, here's the situation. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'm going to put this in airplane mode. That should do it. Okay, so anyway, what I was saying though is that SQPN is already, I think, is probably one of the, among the largest network of podcasts out there. I mean, you've got the Twit network, you've got the BlueBerry network, you've got the Mevio network, and then you have, I think, the SQPN network and the GSPN.TV network, my own network. And so these, and I think there's the Personal Life Media Network. There are a couple others out there, but SQPN for a very niche target audience of Catholics, they're already at this one level. But I think what we're going to see is some really amazing things. I see God really, clearing the path for some awesome stuff for them, as well as even for me. I mean, I am on the verge of so many big things in my own business, my own personal life, my own goals of what might be the future of where the content of GSPN.TV takes us, and where this community, what this community will end up looking like. I'm on the verge of so many big things, and of course I'm decompressing from an awesome 4-day weekend away, and I'm overwhelmed with an amazing amount of emails. If you've emailed me, please understand you will get a response from me. It could take at least another 4 or 5 days before I get back to you. It's just the reality of what it is, and I'm trying not to let myself get overwhelmed by it all. But they're podcasting as a whole, as an industry, podcasting overall, I believe has been, there was this initial, everybody found out about it, and boom, this huge explosive growth. And of course, with that explosive growth was an explosive growth of people who had no clue about audio equipment, no clue about the technology, no clue about sample rates or bit rates, and you had so many people, hundreds of thousands of people out there putting out podcasts, and hundreds of thousands of them sounding like trash. And so it gave a lot of people this impression that podcasting wasn't all what it was cracked up to be, that was kind of maybe a passing fad. Well, obviously there were many people who pod faded. A lot of people quit listening to podcasts as a result of just running into too many poorly produced shows. But there had been several people, like the folks over at SQPN, like myself, my wife, and the co-host that I have here at GSPN.TV, and several other, literally thousands of other independent podcast producers who have not given up, who took the time to to perfect many things and to learn and to dive in and take things to the next level, to where you can hear a podcast, Answer Man podcast, that has the audio production values of this show, what you hear right now. And so, and people are coming back. People all the time are hiring me today. I would say I get this response at least 5 times per month from different people. 5 different people per month will have a conversation with me saying, hey, I just came around to checking out a show. I was looking at something and I came across your site, and it's like, wow, I was blown away by the production values of your show. And I'll have to tell you, I had given up on podcasting. I heard about it when it was a major buzz back in the day, and I listened to a couple shows, and I decided this was just really horrible audio, and that nobody would ever take this seriously. And you've convinced me otherwise. As a matter of fact, I've listened to sometimes they'll say, I listened to like 20 of your episodes over the last 3 or 4 days, but I've also checked out some of your other shows. And then I did some searching, and I found that there are other quality shows. And wow, if podcasting could be done at this level of quality of production, there's some future to this. And people are hiring me left and right to help them learn what it takes to produce quality content, much like the ones you're hearing here in the other shows at gspn.tv. And so this is, I think, there was this explosive growth in the beginning. It kind of plateaued for a while. Some people actually saw a steady decline in subscribers, a slow but steady decline. I had not once have I ever seen a decline in subscribers, with the exception of during the summer hiatus during the for the TV show Fan Podcast. That's the only time. But all of my other shows, I've always seen, I saw the explosive growth up front. I saw a plateau. But even since then, I'm still always adding 1 or 2 or 3 or sometimes as many as 70 new subscribers each week on many of my shows, on most of my shows. And so I'm seeing things on the steady incline, and there are times when I see big jumps, and obviously one of those big jumps is this week. I went to Catholic New Media conference or celebration, and I spoke in front of all of these people, and the podcast number subscriptions, I think, I don't really get into the stats a whole lot, but let's just say this, over 100 new subscribers within the last, since it's been 1 week within the last 7 days. So, over 100 new subscribers. And that was just me going to an event and speaking to these people. But what does that say to me? That says that those people, they caught the vision there enough that they came to my site, enough that they didn't just listen, but they actually went and they subscribed. And of course, if you want to know how I know that, it's because of the stats that I used. And I use Libsyn.com, Libsyn.com. And it tells me where people are subscribing from. And these people went and they downloaded iTunes. They're downloading all these other places. Other things that'll prove to you podcasting's not dead. Remember back in, I think it was either June or July, I shared with you that the iTunes podcast store was now open to 67 new countries, including all the BRIC, including all 4 of the BRIC countries: Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And basically that these 67 countries represent over 4.3 billion people. All right, that's 64.2% of the world's population now has the access to iTunes. And if they download iTunes, the podcast store is right there with everything else that you can get in podcasting, opening up the world to a whole new breed of podcast listeners out of this world. And so explosive opportunity there. But not only that, I got a phone call last week, or an email last week, from a gentleman from Microsoft. And let me see if I can find his name here real quick. And let's see, Rob from over at Zune.net. Anyway, Rob and I are actually going to be talking. Rob Greenlee, it looks like. Anyway, Rob Greenlee and I are going to talk about Zune podcasting. Now, he had reached out to me and says, I'd love to talk to you about the opportunities for podcasters to be listed in the Zune directory and stuff like that. And to be honest with you, I've never been all that excited about the Zune podcast directory. I think the Zune software has been, at least when I looked at it, when Zune first came out, and even a couple months later down the road, it was just ugly and not easy to navigate. And of course, by that time, I was so much of an Apple fanboy that really I didn't give it enough of a chance. A friend of mine let me borrow his Zune MP3 player for, I think he brought it here and he let me borrow it. I think I had it on loan for about 3 months. Not once did I ever hook it up. I mean, I don't know. I don't know why. I should have. Of course, I do know why. I was extremely busy, and I was still in the phase of my business where I was trying to build, my clientele. I was trying to build my consulting in the end of things. I was trying to continue to produce the content and working around the clock. So that's why I didn't do it. But anyway, I'm looking forward to getting to talk to Rob because I would love to find out what's going on over at Zune. And the social Zune podcasting network, get some information and insights there. But then this week, I heard about what's going on with BlackBerry. Hey, I need to insert this here in post-production, something I completely forgot to mention on Podcast Answer Man episode 173, and it was something that I kept making a mental note that I wanted to include in the show, is that while I was in Boston, I threw a social media tweet up and invited a bunch of folks that I had met at PodCamp Boston 2 several years ago, and basically ran into Steve Garfield, a guy I met several years ago at PodCamp Boston 2, and one of the things that he brought up to me was something that I had never really thought of before, and that was having sponsored events. Like, for example, for Stephanie and I to go to PodCamp Boston 5, that's a desire of ours, is to be able to go and do that. Now, for that to happen, we have some money that is set aside. We could probably pull that off because the folks over at SQPN helped take care of most all the expenses that were necessary for me to go to the trip to Boston this weekend. And so I had already saved up some money to go to SQPN's CNMC. And it would be a little bit of a stretch, but have been thinking about going to PodCamp Boston 5, which I believe is September 25th. Is that right, Stephanie? Yes. So we've been thinking about going to that. Of course, it'd be a little bit of a financial stretch for us, but I'm thinking it would be totally worthwhile. But one of the things that I had as a conversation with Steve Garfield over at stevegarfield.com was that he had mentioned that he'll oftentimes go to like a Blog World or one of these conferences, and he blogs about it and does video episodes about it and all this other stuff. And he actually has a company who will sponsor that. So he'll say, hey, the coverage of this event, of course, my attending this event is being sponsored by such and such company. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't at least take the opportunity to let you guys know that there is an opportunity for any business out there who would like to sponsor Stephanie and I to go to PodCamp Boston 5 the weekend of September 25th. I would be interested in talking with you about that, and or if you know of a company that you think would benefit greatly from getting a lot of exposure on all the blog posts, podcast episodes, videos done on YouTube, and also my actual speaking engagement where I'll be talking about at PodCamp Boston 5. If I go, I would definitely talk about how I make money from podcasting. That seems to be one of the things that most people want to learn about. So anyway, if there's a company out there, if you happen to be a part of a company that you would love to sponsor that event, please email me, cliff@podcastanswerman.com. I now return you to the regularly scheduled and previously recorded episode of Podcast Answer Man. Now, probably if you're a podcaster, you may have already seen this if you're on Twitter and stuff like that. But if not, this might be news to you. And it's yet another huge announcement. BlackBerry, RIM, I guess we should say RIM, RIM Technologies or whatever. The BlackBerry, the smartphones. They have just announced that they are going to be launching the BlackBerry podcast application. Now, this is an official application from BlackBerry, and in fact, I believe in the newest software revision, they're actually including this on all new devices. When you upgrade to the newest software, it's going to be built in. But even for those who, it's available for BlackBerry users, at least if you have, and I have it right here, if you have a BlackBerry Bold, a Curve, a Pearl, or a Storm, or a Tour. So it's for the BlackBerry Bold, Curve, Pearl, Storm, or Tour. All of those devices, definitely you can go and get the podcast application from BlackBerry. Now, I heard about this from some friends on Twitter. They say, hey, I can't wait to hear what Cliff has to say about this on the next podcast, Answer Man. And it was a link to, it was information about BlackBerry's new announcement. And so I did some searching online, and I saw that my friend Rob over at Podcast 411 did an interview with the guy from BlackBerry. And if you can go to podcast411.com, and it had been years since Rob had, or at least it seems like years, since Rob had put an episode of Podcast 411 out. But he did an interview with the gentleman from BlackBerry, or from RIM, and it's extremely interesting. From what I heard from him and from what I saw, you can go to blackberry.com/podcasts, and that's podcasts plural. So blackberry.com/podcasts. And I'm on that site now, and it says get free podcasts delivered directly to you with the BlackBerry podcast app. Subscribe to your favorite podcasts, or download some new ones and watch them when you want on your BlackBerry smartphone. Download the BlackBerry podcast app today to get started. And let's see here. Some of the features, it says, enjoy free entertainment on your BlackBerry smartphone with the BlackBerry podcast app. This app allows you to do the following: browse and search for free podcasts from categories like arts, TV and film, news, and more with the BlackBerry podcast catalog. So they're going to have their own store, just like the iTunes store. And then subscribe to, download, and play podcasts directly from your BlackBerry smartphone. And you can receive notifications when episodes of your podcast are available, and automatically download them. Now, of course, you have to have a data plan, and like I said, you have to have one of those phones that I mentioned earlier. But I'm looking here, and what I heard in the interview is that there's, like I said, you need to get your podcast listed into the store. And by the way, if you go to blackberry.com/podcasts, and then at the very bottom of that page, well, actually, you'll see a little section. It's not the very bottom. It's about it's right below. Well, I'll tell you what. Just look. It goes BlackBerry podcast app features, system requirements, and then it says submit your podcast. And there's a little link there. It says add your podcasts or podcast today. And by the way, I'm going to go ahead and give you the URL. If you want it, it's a crazy URL. I'll just read it out here. It's RIM podcast, which is RIM, rimpodcast.quickplay.ca/RIM podcasting. Again, that's rimpodcast.quickplay.ca/RIM podcasting. Okay, and once you go there, you have to sign up for an account. It's free. You don't have to give them a credit card or anything like that. You just sign up for an account, and then once you have an account, you can then log in and you can submit your RSS feeds. And again, it's very simple. When you actually do this, you just you type in the name of your show, you pick the category that it's supposed to be in. You choose whether or not it's explicit or not, and you paste in your URL for the RSS feed, and you hit submit. And that's all there is to it. And you can do as many as you want. Add all your podcast feeds. I know I added about 10 to 12 of mine right off the bat, and it didn't take very long at all to do that many of them. So I'm sure you'll be able to get your one or two podcasts in there very easily. And but it is a manual approval process, so they are going to manually approve these. And of course, it being brand new, I would imagine that right off the back, it's going to take probably 2 to 3 weeks to get some approvals taken care of, and eventually they'll get that probably speeded up, much like iTunes did. I'm looking on the site here as well. It looks like they've got some screen caps here. It's got a channel detail, like when you're browsing the store, it says Discovery Channel, Video Podcast, and of course there's a big huge blue subscribe button. Shows you some of the most recent episodes that are listed there. And then I am going to look at there are options. So basically you get the option, it says download files using, and you can choose Wi-Fi only, 3G, or probably any So you can actually tell it, say, hey, I don't want you to use up my cellular data plan. I want you to wait until I'm within Wi-Fi range, and then download them. You can also tell it where to download the files to, and of course, I guess there might be some internal memory, but if your phone doesn't have internal memory, you can tell it to put it into a memory card. There's an option where you can tell it to only download podcast while charging, only download podcast while not roaming. Do people still have roaming plans? I guess so. Anyway, enable podcast alerts so that you get, I guess, a push notification. Allow explicit podcasts, so you can actually allow that, or say, you know what, don't download anything that's explicit. When new episodes are found, you can tell it to download newest, and I'm not sure what's in the drop-down menu, but it looks like there's several other options there. And it says when there are new episodes, when the new episode arrives, what do we want to keep? And it's automatically right there showing all, or you can keep the most recent 5 or whatever, I'm sure. I don't know, but I would assume it's similar to what the iTunes options are. Anyway, and of course, there's the option to go in and check for updates now. Now, here's what I loved about this announcement with RIM. RIM has always been known for their capabilities of push. And instead, what's amazing is that whenever a new episode is available of a podcast, instead of having to go and check every hour or every 24 hours or every 2 hours or whatever, from what I understood from the interview, if I, as the producer of Podcast Answer Man, if I put this episode online and you happen to be subscribed to my feed in their store, and I put a new episode online, and you say, hey, let's just say you have it set up to where you can, you've told it, hey, it's okay to go ahead and download this via Wi-Fi or 3G. As long as I have a connection, I want you to download it. If you have that set up, from my understanding is that I could publish a new episode, this episode number 173 in the Podcast Answer Man feed, and as soon as the store checks and sees that new episode in the feed, it immediately pushes that file onto your device. So it automatically does this. And so what I love about this is you don't have to actually download everything into iTunes and then sync it onto your phone. Now, I know that iTunes tried to do something similar to this, but I mean, they didn't get it quite right. It's not something that can be done automatically. You have to go into your iPod functionality, go into podcast, go into one of the shows you're subscribed to and say, get more episodes, and then see if there's more, and you can download it that way if you want. I mean, it's super clunky still on the iTunes way of doing podcasting on the iPhone, but man, this sounds awesome. It really does sound awesome. And so for those of you who have a BlackBerry Bold, Curve, Pearl, Storm, or Tour, please give me a call and let me know what it's like for you. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Give me a call on the voicemail feedback hotline, 859-795-4067. 859-795-4067. All right, so there you go. I mean, you've got, like I said, from my perspective, I'm seeing clients, I'm seeing organizations, I'm seeing businesses, I'm seeing so many people consistently always adopting podcasting. And that is not lightening up. In fact, it's getting more and more intense. I love this. And of course, with the fact that iTunes had brought the podcast directory to billions of more people, and the fact that BlackBerry is now going to make this available by default on all their future OS operating system, and that already millions of people who have BlackBerries can go in and download this app right away, or they're going to get it automatically in a future release. This, my friends, and the fact that it's also podcasting is going to be built into the Windows 7, I believe, as well, because it's bringing in a lot of the Zune functionality, and Zune does have this. My friends, podcasting we are still just on the verge of this thing. Sure, I've been doing this for 5 years. I've seen some explosive growth. I've seen some amazing things, but I think we're still at the beginning. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. And yeah, podcasting is very much I think it's going to be so mainstream that pretty much everybody's going to know what a podcast is eventually. Just like everybody today knows what a blog is. I remember back when I was blogging, before blogging was called blogging, I remember I had these GeoCities or angelfire.com HTML free space that I could create HTML pages, and I would create my index.html and write a bunch of stuff about what's going on, and I would keep building on there. And finally, I had so many different entries by date that I had to create a, January 1996, .html. And then I created a new index page that had a link to that archived information. And I was doing all that stuff by hand. And of course, I was just calling it my online journal. And later things came around with this thing called Blogger and movable type and so many other tools came around, and then finally WordPress. And today, I mean, who doesn't know what a blog is? Who doesn't know what a blog is? But I can tell you, I was involved, and I was blogging heavily years before blogging went mainstream. And of course, back then, not everybody was going, "Oh, blogging is dead. Blogging is dead." I wonder if people have said blogging is dead. But anyway, it's certainly not dead, and podcasting certainly isn't either. And I'm excited about the new information here. So again, go to blackberry.com/podcasts and scroll down and make sure that you submit your podcast into their directory as quickly as possible. Alrighty, so what else do I have on the list of things here today? I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and share one other thing. And of course, one of the things that contributed to just how terrible my episode went on Thursday when I recorded it live, I had met this young girl at the Catholic New Media Celebration, and I, for whatever reason, wrote down her last name wrong on the recording, and so I called her by her wrong name, but her name is Avery Grant. And my friends, I wanted to share this with you as a means of encouragement, as a means of encouragement to you guys, just to say, hey, here is somebody who is 14 years old and has a desire to share her own personal message with the world. And if you wonder what can a 14-year-old girl accomplish with podcasting and new media, I want you to listen to this, a little tiny interview that I did. By the way, I recorded. I didn't take my Adderall down to the meet and greet during the Catholic New Media Conference, but instead what I did was took my iPhone out and said, I've got to interview you for Podcast Answer Man. And so have a listen to this. This is a little interview I did with Avery Grant.
Okay, everybody, Cliff Ravenscraft here, and I am on the scenes at the Catholic New Media Conference, and I am talking with Avery Grant. And Avery, how old are you?
I'm 14 years old.
Now, I know we've had some conversation already, and you're going to repeat some things, but Avery here is a 14-year-old podcaster who's been podcasting now for the past year. And tell us what your podcast is.
My podcast is called Live Out Loud, and it's for Catholic kids and teens, focusing on saints, apologetics, evangelism, and just listener-submitted questions, whatever people want to know about faith-wise, we just talk about.
And I so rudely interrupted her to pull out my recorder so I could capture this for everybody. But tell me again, how did you hear about podcasting at first?
I heard about podcasting first when I was in about 6th grade. I listened to Mrs. Lisa Hendy's Catholic Moments podcast. I was out doing yard work or something like that, and it was just the only interesting thing to listen to. And so then in about 7th grade, I started really listening to podcasts like the Life Teen podcast, Sunday, and some of the other Life Teen podcasts, and I just really liked it. And then when I was discerning what God was really calling me to do, and I started learning about podcasting, I was like, hey, that's definitely something I could do. I love talking, so I could definitely start doing a podcast, and it just kind of started from that.
Well, I can tell right now, as a 14-year-old, I'm thoroughly impressed by the personality and the just being very confident in yourself. how has this, was this something that you were like this confident going into, or have you kind of grown into this confidence?
It's definitely something I've grown into. When I started, I was like, oh, no one's going to listen to this show. No one's going to really like it. I'm not going to have any listeners. Why am I even doing this? But God was just like, no, it's going to be okay. You can do this. So I kept doing it, and I had no listeners, and it was like, God, why am I doing this? This makes no sense. And he just said, wait, hold on, we're going to keep doing this. So I just kept doing it, and now I'm up to like 7,000 subscribers, and it's like, okay, God, you're probably right. So it's just grown in confidence as I've grown closer to Christ in doing this. I've also gotten more confidence in myself that I can share the Word of God, and people will listen, and it'll change lives, and it's just been a great experience.
That is absolutely amazing. Let me ask you some technical details, because that's what my audience for Podcast Answer Man is really interested about. So you started out podcasting. What software, what hardware were you using?
When I started off, oh my goodness, I found a webcam in the closet that was like 6 years old that didn't really record voice, but it sort of did, and it was probably like $10. And then I don't even remember. I think I was using like...
You're using Spruce?
I was using something free. I just downloaded it, and now I'm using Roxio Media Creator, and I bought a pretty nice microphone about a year ago, like 6 months ago to start using.
Very cool. And your website, what do you use to host your website? Is it, what software platform are you using there?
I use WordPress to host my website.
Is it WordPress.com or your own hosted account?
It's my own hosted account. Like, I use, I think, Bluehost.
Oh, I love to hear that. By the way, podcastanswerman.com/hosting for more details and affiliate links.
So I use Bluehost.com, and that's what I use to host it, and then I use WordPress as the software. So.
That's excellent. So did you teach yourself that?
Yes, it was a long journey.
That is really, really cool. So now, as far as your podcast, do you have any kind of like big stories that have happened as a result of this? Has the newspaper contacted you? Any kind of press or any kind of like people say, "Wow, this you gotta see what's going on here"?
I haven't really had much press about it. I did do an interview on Catholic Moments about 6 months ago, but it's really nice to hear just stories from different people. I got an email from somebody in Russia the other week that was just saying, we're in Russia, we speak English, there's not very many Catholics here, but every single week we listen to your show, and it's just nice to hear people from all over the world that are just saying, hey, I like this, keep doing this, and it's really, really motivational.
That's awesome. And so you have plans to continue this on for indefinitely?
Definitely.
That is awesome. I love to hear that. So if people wanted to go find your show, where do they go?
They can go to www.livewtl.com.
And say that one more time just for emphasis.
livewtl.com.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alrighty, so there you go. That was Avery Grant, and I will put links to her Live Out Loud podcast in iTunes on the show notes for episode number 173 here of Podcast Answer Man. But I hope that encourages you as much as it does me. And in fact, it shows you that, podcasting is already being embraced by even yet the next generation. Even my own kids are podcasters. My daughter Megan does the show The World According to Megan. My son Matt does a show called Gaming with Matt. Both of those shows can be found over at gspn.tv if you browse around to the various sections there. But yeah, wow. So exciting to see somebody who is 14 years old, who is so well equipped to speak and share their vision, their passion, their message with the world. And this stuff was not available years ago. The days of the gatekeepers are gone. And we all have the opportunity to use podcasting to get the word out, and I love what is available. Anyway, Catholic New Media Celebration, it was an amazing time. I spoke 3 different sessions, taught 3 different sessions with Father Roderick. He and I did podcasting. We did like the basics of podcasting, the what you need to think, more of a philosophical approach to podcasting, and then we did some more of the technical details of podcasting. Did 3 different sessions. You'll be very happy to know that all 3 of those sessions were recorded via Ustream, and I'll put links to those in the show notes at podcastanswerman.com. Look for episode number 173. There will be links to those talks. And of course, you heard Avery mention there Bluehost as a hosting provider. I do suggest that you use WordPress. And if you're going to use WordPress, I would definitely suggest that you not use WordPress.com, but instead have your own self-hosted Bluehost account, your own self-hosted account. And of course, you can use a ton of different hosting providers out there. Bluehost is my host of choice personally, and so many of my clients have signed up for it. I do get an affiliate credit or commission if you choose to use it through my links. If you just go to podcastanswerman.com/hosting. Again, that's podcastanswerman.com/hosting. You'll get to read a whole blog post about why I like them, and of course there will be a link where if you click through there, I get a decent commission. It's enough that it's actually worth me mentioning. So I usually don't mention affiliates unless it's worthwhile. And so I want to say thank you to all of you who are using the Bluehost link to sign up. I get a nice check each month from Bluehost, and I'm thankful for that. And I'm thankful to those of you who click through my link. Also, want to say, let's see here. If you're looking for, it's like, how do I get all this stuff set up? How, Cliff, I agree. I've heard everybody talk about WordPress, getting my own hosted solution, and I want to start a podcast. How do I can't afford you $150 an hour and all these hours for you to train me and teach me how to do all this stuff. Well, I have a great training video tutorial for you. It's called WordPress for Podcasters. And basically, it is literally a step-by-step video training tutorial with high-quality video, high-quality audio, and step-by-step zooming in and panning in so that you see all the important details. And literally, if you just sit side by side with this thing, you can do this. In fact, I've got a testimonial from one of the folks who have purchased this from me, and I think this comes from Ron Nutter.
Hello,
Ron?
This is Ron Nutter. I've been the help desk editor at Network World for about 17 years, and some things changed recently to where I was going to need to start doing more on my own. I had done podcasts for several years. I had set up IIS and some websites and had used Front Page and other tools, but I knew there had to be an easier way of getting a website up and running. I'd heard a little bit about something called WordPress, but wasn't quite sure where to go. And a friend that I've known for many years who recently had to go through something similar pointed me over to Cliff Ravenscraft's website, Podcast Answerman. And one of the things that I noticed was a video training set that he had on a whole host of topics, but the first one being WordPress for podcasters. And I knew I didn't want to spend my time hand coding HTML and figuring out how to get MP3 files to play on a website. I contacted Cliff. We exchanged a few emails. I, within a few days, bought the WordPress for podcasters, went through it several times, and the nice thing that I found with the training, it wasn't a how fast can I go and get it all squeezed in. He took his time with it, and literally, I started and stopped it as I was getting the website set up. So I would go so far, I would see what was going on, and then I would duplicate the steps with whatever changes I needed for the way I was specifically doing it, and got things to work literally within a matter of hours. And I had pretty much planned that it was going to take me several weeks, having, like I said, gone back for several years and hand coding HTML and getting that all to work. And it was a very much a no muss, no fuss, no hassle deal. And if more things were like that, I think we'd really have some interesting sites out there. And this is just one of the training sets that he's got. I've bought some of the others and probably will be buying the remainder very shortly. But, just getting started with WordPress, it can be very intimidating because, I was thinking all the behind the scenes, the CGI, and, I knew kind of what PHP was, but wouldn't begin to know how to program. And Cliff takes that, you don't get, scared about it. He just says, okay, go do this. You walk through this, and it's literally that simple. And you can't make it any easier than that. Cliff doesn't talk down to you. He talks at you, works with you, and he's there not, just to get the sale, but he works with you afterwards. He's been great about doing follow-up emails when I've had some other questions, and then he's got the GSPN site where you can talk to fellow podcasters and other folks who are doing things similar, just to share ideas and see maybe where you're doing something maybe not as well as you could have. So you can't do any better than this, and you could certainly do it worse. So this is one training set that you really need to get invested in, to get up and running as quickly as possible. So Cliff, good luck with this, and thanks for all your efforts.
All right, Ron, thank you so much for that valuable testimonial. And full disclosure there, I did ask the folks who had purchased my products if they enjoyed the content that they had received. They thought it was worth the money enough to suggest that other people buy it, that would you consider sending me a testimonial. So that was, these are solicited testimonials, but I can tell you that I certainly did not tell them what to say at all, and I am very appreciative of your encouraging words, Ron, and I'm so glad that it was helpful to you. And if I can be of service to anybody out there, I'm available for one-on-one consulting. You can contact me for that. I'm also got these, of course, the way to contact me for that is sending me an email, cliff@podcastanswerman.com. Again, that's cliff@podcastanswerman.com. The other thing that you can do is you can call in your questions and voicemail comments for Podcast Answer Man. The phone number for the voicemail feedback hotline is 859-795-4067. Again, that phone number is 859-795-4067. A couple other things. Right now I'm thinking about Podcast Answer Man, and the last several weeks recording the show live has not gone as well as I'd like, and obviously I still want to do our live show Thursdays and stuff like that, but I may decide to pull Podcast Answer Man from the live show lineup just so that I'm not distracted. This is the one show that I kind of have come around to agreeing with Walter a couple episodes back, with the fact that this is the actual business expression, the professional business expression of what I do here. I still very much believe in the somewhat the unpolished approach to podcasting, and obviously I'm not going to go back and edit out the part where my iPhone did the little status update when somebody had sent out a Twitter reply to me. So I still very much feel like that, but I don't want to be distracted, and sometimes I get caught up in saying something in the show, and then all of a sudden I see some intense debate, which I love to see, the intense debate. Some people who very much disagree with something that I said, and somebody who totally agrees with what I said, and going back and forth and back and forth. It's just the problem that I'm running into is actually getting caught up into reading that as I'm actually speaking about the next topic. And that really throws some things off, and I don't know. I'm thinking through this. Bear with me. But just know this. There's still going to be plenty of shows taking up all day on Thursday, even if I just decide to pull Podcast Answer Man from that lineup. Literally, I did not feel good about how the original recording of this episode went, which is why I'm here on Saturday afternoon completely re-recording. And I think I'm already feeling a lot better about the professionalism of what's been projected here compared to what was recorded on Thursday. Anyway, I look forward to working with you. God bless you all. Until next time, I encourage you to join the community.